Clark in person, otherwise known as that wonderful actor, Don Murray.
Before we start any question, I just wanted to say that motion pictures are probably the least individualistic of all the art forms. That no one can claim a film, and the idea that putting anyone's name up in the film and says a film by so-and-so, it's just not realistic. This film in particular had some wonderful, wonderful creators. First come to mind, of course, is Irvin Kershner. And Irvin Kershner did such an incredible job in ways that probably are not obvious to you because everyone there looked like actors. But only about half of the people on that screen were actually actors. And he combined actual real people. The judge was a nightclub comedian. The fellow that was the gangster ran the gambling ring, he was a clerk, and Kershner made no difference between the actors and the non-actors in the performance. So I think that was just amazing. And then of course there's Haskell Wexler and his photography. How he elevated the black and white by painting pictures with his black and white was just an amazing thing to me. And then there's someone here that very, very generously and with a great deal of humility that amazes me. He declined a credit on this film, but he deserves a great deal of credit. He's a wonderful motion picture writer named Christopher Knopf, and he did the final polish on the script. And fortunately, he is here today. Christopher is somewhere in the audience. There he is in the back. By the way, he's a former president of the Screenwriters Guild, and he's one of the people that knows this industry better than probably anybody in this room. And he's just written a wonderful book about his experiences that anybody who's a film buff should have this book. And it's called, Will the Real Me Please Stand Up? And that's Christopher Knopf. Then, I'd like to mention, all the time when people get accolades for films, they usually talk about the director and the actors and the writers and so on. And they overlook the businessman. My partner, no, it's okay now. My partner, Walter Wood, this film would not have been made without Walter Wood. When we were making this film, United Artists thought they were making a little B-picture exploitation film. And so we had a very low budget. The budget started at $285,000. And when we realized that working in all these prisons and having to, every time you take a piece of equipment in, you have to unlock a door and then lock it again and so on, that we weren't going to be able to finish this film for $285,000. So we went back to New York with little pieces of film to show it to United Artists to get them to raise the budget. And they finally did and gave us a total of $560,000 to finish the film. And that wouldn't have happened without Walter. And also Walter had a wonderful spirit. When I would get down on the problems of making the film, for instance, after the first week that we shot, we found that the first 2 days of shooting that party scene, that the sound was not usable. It was full of static, and it just was practically indistinguishable, the words. And we're sitting in the screening room, and the sound men are there, and he turns to the head sound man and he says, "Bernie, we're making a talkie." And I'd like to mention Don Joslin, who played Peter in this thing. Don Joslin was a guy who had a great spirit. He just never got down with anything. And when I was going through all the problems of film, one scene, like in the robbery scene, Keir cut an artery in his arm, and he was spurting blood all over the place, and we had to close down and take him to the hospital. And I was just thinking, I was sitting in one of those cops' cars, and I think, oh my God, just let us get any picture on the film, any kind of quality. Just go to the company, won't think we stole their money. And he came in and sat down next to me, and he's saying, this is going to be a great film. This is going to be the best thing for your career. This is going to make all of us. You know, I'm thinking, yeah. But that was Don. I remember one night, there was lightning came in the window. And I said, the atom bomb. And Don said, no, God's taking our picture. And Don isn't with us anymore. Either is Walter, and I think Walter's son, I hope, isn't here with his family. I know he's invited. Randy Wood. I don't see him out there, but there he is back there. Yeah. He's there with his family. And Don Joslin's wife, Suzanne Joslin, I hope is here too. She should be here to enjoy this thing. Oh, there she is. And that's it. Those are the people that are the real makers of this film.
Now, Don, you're playing a character based on a real-life person.
Yes.
Father Clark really did exist.
Yes, he did.
And you did meet him, and you studied his behavior.
Mm-hmm.
In what way did you pattern your performance on this real-life person? How closely did you study him?
Well, very, very closely. And as a matter of fact, so many of the best lines from the film come from Father Clark himself. They're not something that I made up in the script, or that Christopher made up in the script. Lines like, you had your go, let me yap for a while. That's Father Clark, that's the way he talked. When he said that this is about the father that's too tight, and he goes and loosens the belt. That came from Father Clark. That's actually what he did with a boy in the gas chamber. And the film is full of things like that.
You're telling me that in some ways you had to bring down the performance because he really sounded like a Hood with an extremely thick accent.
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, when we first got into rehearsals, Krishna said, come on, Don, you can't talk like that. You sound like some New Jersey mafia character. I said, well, that's the way the father talks. And he said, yeah. He said, but nobody's going to believe that. He said, nobody could believe such a person exists. So I did have to tone down my speech a little bit.
Did Father Clark bend the law a bit? I mean, in the film, there's a sort of fine line between following the law and breaking the law. He walked a very thin line there.
Oh, yes, he did. Yeah, that's why he actually got in that trouble. He came very close to being indicted, and certainly close to being thrown out of the church.
But he wasn't ultimately.
No, obviously. That was true, just what that Father Provincial, that's exactly what happened. He was relieved of his teaching duties and devoted himself just to his convicts. By the way, that halfway house in this film led to establishing over 100 such halfway houses all over the United States and Canada.
So I said, it's a film with a message, and a very good message. A very good message. Now that opening scene is terrific. How many of you thought at the beginning, when the character's putting on the shoulder strap, that it was for a gun? How many of you thought he was one of the criminals? And so when he puts on the collar, it's really a surprise. It's a brilliant opening, establishing the character's unconventionality. Whose idea was that opening scene?
Well, that came from the nature of Father Clark. That was something that we wrote because that's the way Father Clark operated, actually, like that. He was so much. He made the criminals sometimes think that he was a criminal. So we thought that would make it a wonderful thing with the audience, kind of surprise the audience and build a kind of suspense.
And it immediately says, this is not Bing Crosby and going my way.
Hardly.
Hardly. You know that right from the top.
Right.
Was everything shot on location in St. Louis?
Everything was shot on location, except that we were not allowed to shoot in the real gas chamber in Jefferson City Prison. So we built exactly what that was in Jefferson City Prison, and all the procedure was exactly as it was in Jefferson City.
That was built on a...
That was built on a set here in Hollywood. Yeah.
Here, no,
And the only other thing that was a set was the last room when he makes the stand up in that all destroyed building when he's up there. That scene we built back in Hollywood
as well.
Yeah, because the tenements there were too dangerous. We couldn't shoot inside them.
So, to what extent were you aware of Haskell Wexler arranging light? Part of the beauty of the film is that it looks like neorealism, but it's so artfully done with light and shadow. Did he take a lot of time setting up each shot, arranging the light, or did he just use what was there in the real place?
No, he really painted with light, and he didn't take a lot of time because we didn't have a lot of money, but he worked for what he got. He worked very, very quickly. But those visual things were really his concepts. The scene was written, but the scene would not describe, for instance, starting the scene with seeing only the shadow of Pio coming up the stairs in the end before he breaks up the place. There's so many things that were Haskell's conception, and also Irving Kershner's. Irving Kershner and Wexler worked together so beautifully. They just had the language that they understood each other. So it was their combination and their contribution.
Why did you become a co-writer of the film? And you didn't use your real name?
Well, there's two questions. One, I became a co-writer because I was the one that really knew the Hoodlum Priest. I had met the Hoodlum Priest and became fascinated by him, and I wrote the original 15-page story outline that United Artists bought. And then the first screenplay we got, everybody, Kershner and Walter Wood and myself, we all agreed that it was not the Hoodlum Priest. It was a going my way kind of priest. It was funny because Walter once said to me, well, we have to go back and ask United Artists for more money. And I said, oh yeah, sure, we've never produced anything else in our life, and our first decision we made, and we said, gee, we made a mistake, give us some more money. They throw us right out on their ears. And Kershner's idea was to bring another script to them of a totally different movie to do instead of the Hoodlum Priest. I said, oh sure, we just convinced United Artists that we got the greatest apples in the world, and we come back and say, look, the apples turned out to be rotten. How about buying these oranges? So there was no other, we didn't have the money to do anything else. And I had written a very successful screenplay that was adopted for television about refugees that I had worked with in Europe and a forerunner of the Peace Corps. And that was very successful, so I thought, since I had written that, I could probably write this, and that's how it happened. And I didn't use my name because, this is in the early days, even when, Kirk Douglas was producing films, but they were executive producers. They didn't write the films. They hired writers, and it wasn't until Cassavetes, who came along right after me, that they started to see actors writing the script.
You thought you would be treated prejudicially?
Yeah, I thought the film would be treated prejudicially. So I took a romantic name. I was a runner in high school as captain. I had teams, track team, so I took the name that some people called me in school called Don Deere. So I thought, gee, that's a romantic name. So I put that on the screen.
I was really impressed by Keir Dulley's performance.
Oh, boy.
We know him from Space Odyssey. We know him from different kinds of parts. Yeah. And I would have thought, just looking at him, that he wasn't right for the part. I wouldn't have cast him in the part visually. But he played it. Emotionally, it was truthful.
Foster, that is terrific. You're very perceptive, because let me tell you about Keir Dulley. We were looking for the boy, and we looked at a couple of people. Two of the people that I looked at was Peter Falk and the fellow Robert Blake. We were looking at those two, and they were wonderful actors, but they both seemed to be a little bit too mature. They were, I think Peter Falk might even be older than I, but they were too close to my age, and they needed somebody younger. And this agent that I didn't really care for, he kept on pushing this boy from back east, and he showed me his pictures. And I said, he looks like a prep school boy. What are you talking? He's supposed to be a hoodlum. He said, please, you got to see him. He said, I'll pay for him, and I'll fly him out to Hollywood, and you read him. So we flew him out, and we got together at about 8 o'clock at night, and we put him through the most grueling improvisations from 8 o'clock until about 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, Kirshner and Walter Wood and myself. And he finally just knocked us out. But what we did is that character was written first as the wise guy, the guy that planned the crimes, you know, and so on, not the naive one. And when we started rehearsals, we saw, my God, that Don Joslin playing Pio, you know, he looked like he was born and grew up in the streets and never seen the inside of a house, you know. And Keir still had that kind of, I don't know, naivete about him, so we switched the characters. They with the same role, but we made the characters totally different. And that's what made it work.
Made a very good visual contrast, the two actors.
Oh, yeah.
They looked so different.
Yeah.
And in a way, Keir's angelic look almost boosts the theme of the film.
Yeah, that's what we thought.
He looked against type, but it ultimately works for it.
Yeah, well, we thought it also was even sadder to have him be the one to go to the jazz center.
We believe your character when he says he's really a good kid. He looks like such a good kid. So it really works for the material. Yeah. It was interesting you mentioned that a lot of the extras were local people, not actors at all.
Oh yeah, there were more non-actors in that film than actors. And that's where Kirshner really shone.
And yet it's seamless because you don't feel a gap between trained actors and real people.
Well, I'm glad you didn't say that because that's the way I felt. And I think that of all the directors that I know that have done that, even Kazan, the great director Kazan, I never felt in his films that the non-actors really were as impressive as the actors. I think Kirshner is the only one that I've seen that really made that happen.
There's this seamlessness between the actors and the non-actors. It's part of the neo-realist quality of the film.
Yeah,
exactly. A complete change of pace now. I said Don has this extraordinary range. Now we go to laughter and romance and comedy and broad acting, bus stop. You said that you owe your performance to your director, Joshua Logan, that you're not a cowboy. You didn't know anything about being a cowboy. And he taught you everything that you needed to know to play the performance.
He was amazing. He had some idea. He saw me on stage in a very, very serious drama called Skin of Our Teeth, in which I played the world destroyer, this terrible, vicious character, who on the stage, he starts to strangle his stage father, and the character gets carried away and really starts to strangle the actor playing the father, and then they come out and stop the play. And he saw that wild viciousness of this character, and somehow he felt that energy of that vicious character would work well for this crazed cowboy who would not stop at anything, you know, to keep him from getting his angel. And so he was the one that, as a matter of fact, when I was doing the screen test, I was very skinny at the time. I had been ill, and I was only weighed like 155 pounds at 6'2". And he put on this big, heavy sheepskin jacket, and I kept taking off because hot under the lights. And he said, "Put that jacket back on." I said, "Josh, I'm dying of the heat in it." He said, "Without it, you look like you're already dead." and he just was the one to tell me how to play the part. I really, of all the parts I've ever played, if I had won that Oscar, I would have to cut it in half and give the top half to him. That was the head part.
But Bo, the character you play, from a certain point of view, is sort of moronic, foolish, innocent. I mean, it's a character it would be possible to dislike. It's a very hard part to bring off. But you make him very likable. I mean, he will offend any hardcore feminists in the audience tonight. After all, he wants to get Marilyn Monroe, he lassos her, he won't take no for an answer. I mean, from any contemporary position of sexual politics, your character is not going to pass muster. But it's possible that he could really be an offensive character. You make him a very likable figure and comic. What was your attitude toward the character? You're obviously much brighter than this character, who was kind of dim.
Well, you know, at least it's better than biting their neck and sucking out their blood today.
Did you like the character?
Oh, I love playing the character. I'd seen it on Broadway. It was played by Albert Salmi and Dick York on Broadway. And, you know, I thought the character was very funny. I enjoyed playing the character.
Didn't they, at first, you were telling me they thought you were playing it much too big and broad, that you were giving a Broadway performance and they were going to have to fire you?
Oh, yeah, what happened is we got back from the location and where we did the real rodeo scenes in Phoenix, Arizona. And the heads of the studio brought Josh Logan in. He didn't tell me this, of course, until the movie was over. They said, Josh, we love the rushes, the rodeo stuff, it's fantastic. It's just two things. Marilyn's makeup is too white. She looks like a clown. And two, Don Murray's performance is too big, too loud, too rambunctious. We got to fire Don Murray. And Logan said, well, one, Marilyn's character, Sherry, she works all night and she sleeps all day. She never sees the sun, so her makeup is right. It should be white like that. And as far as Don is that we had on Broadway, we first cast an aw shucks ma'am cowboy in the role when we tried it out on the road, and we had a flop. And then we cast Albert Salmi, who played it like Attila the Hun, and we had a hit. Don Murray is a bull in a china closet, and he's the cowboy I want, and he's a cowboy we're going to keep. And unfortunately, there was only one man in the studio that agreed with him, but he happened to be a very important man. He was Buddy Adler, the head of production.
Now, what was it like? I'm sure you've been asked a million times. What was it like working with Marilyn Monroe? Was she late? Was she difficult? Did she forget her lines? Was she hard on everybody? And yet what the result is glorious on the screen.
You described it exactly.
What kind of burden did that put on you, acting all the scenes with her?
Well, let me give you some specifics. Number one, as she was late, I mean when you talk late, I'm not talking about 15 minutes, you know. I'm talking about an hour late, 2 hours late, 3 hours late. And she even took off a week in the middle of filming where she didn't show up at all, and she had the excuse that she had the flu, when actually she was having a rendezvous with Arthur Miller, who she was clandestinely seeing at the time. But one of the things that was really amazing to me, everybody in New York in the theater said, hey, movies are easy because you don't get it in take one, they do take two, take three, and so on and so on. And I said, yeah, they do. It's Marilyn Monroe. But they don't do it for you, not when you're with Marilyn Monroe. What happened is that I found that I had to try to be at my best at every single take and every scene, because whatever scene she got through, that's the one that they would use. You know, if it was good on Marilyn, that's what was printed. And unless I completely fell on my face, that's what would be mine on the screen.
So you had to be good 30 times. She only had to be good once.
That was about it. Yeah. But then the thing that really amazed me, about the third or fourth day of shooting, Josh Logan said to me, Don, you know, Marilyn's using her real emotions for the first time. She studied for a year at Actors Studio, left acting for a year and studied at the Actors Studio. He says she's using her real emotions and she's forgetting her technique and she's getting out of camera range and she's getting out of her lights. So I'm going to tell you, when we're shooting from your waist up, then when we are, you put your hands on her hips and you move her into her marks. I said, sure, Josh, do a cowboy when I'm a New Yorker, and do the accent, and do my first movie, try to remember my lines, my performance, and move the biggest movie star in the world onto her marks. Sure, why not? So
But you did.
I was doing that all through the movies, and whenever we were close, you know, in the scene, the two of us in the scene, it was moving her into her marks.
It's going to be great to see this. How many of you have seen Bus Stop in some form? How many have seen it on a huge screen, like the screen at the Aero, widescreen, beautifully composed for CinemaScope? We were talking about this before. There's lots to look at in these widescreen compositions, and very rarely is there a close-up. Very few close-ups. Only with you and Marilyn at the end, are there really major close-ups? Were you aware of that as you were performing?
No, I didn't know what a close-up was. I had no idea what all that was. I was just doing the part, and I didn't have any idea what the camera was doing or anything like that.
But when you see it, you see that the big close-up is reserved for the end.
Oh yeah, I have to tell you about that. That was a funny thing. They did the scene, a big close-up, there's a kiss at the end of the scene. And Josh Logan said to the Milton Krasner cinematographer, Jack, I want just a close-up of the two of them on the screen. And they set up the shot and they lit it. And then he said, okay, roll. And the camera operator said, no, Josh, we can't do this because the camera is cutting off the top of Don's head. And Marilyn said, well, the audience knows he has a top to his head. It's been established.
I wanted to mention another widescreen film of yours, Hatful of Rain. And I believe your extraordinary co-star is here tonight, is that not?
Yes,
the
yes,
wonderful
yes.
Eva Marie Saint.
Yes, yes.
Back there?
Yes. Eva Marie Saint was the un-Marilyn. She was so disciplined and so wonderful, and I have to say, I wish she weren't here so I could say this behind her back, that she was my favorite co-star in any movie that I did.
And we showed Hatful of Rain. We showed Hatful of Rain in Palm Springs in May on a huge widescreen. It is a great and unappreciated film, and I think if Grant's here, we should show Hatful of Rain with you and Eva Marie Saint right here at this theater on this big screen. It's a very rare film. There's so much to say, we could go on and on, but I do want to open the floor to questions from the house. Do you have some questions for Don? Yes?
Sure. What was it like working with Arthur O'Connell?
What was it like working with the great Arthur O'Connell?
Oh, Arthur O'Connell was fun. He was full of stories. It was very, very amusing to work with on the set. But one thing I noticed with Arthur O'Connell, I got a kick out of it, made me laugh at the time, is that when like we do ad-lib some things like with the animals, you know, and when we're going off, and you'll see it, we're going off and leaving to go to the rodeo, we're leaving the ranch, and I start blowing kisses to the animals. Well, as soon as he started blowing kisses to the animals, he started blowing kisses to the animals. It was, what he would do is he would pick up things that you were doing, and then he would repeat them. And I thought that was kind of amusing.
Because it shows you the way he interacted.
Well, yeah, it was
so
because,
sensitive.
he was somebody that was, that lived with Bo, and he felt that the character would mimic what Bo was doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, having grown up in the 70s, I always think of you first and foremost as the evil governor in Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah. We have somebody from the 70s. Evil Governor, Conquest of the Apes.
That's it. Well, that was a little interesting thing about that. I figured that evil governors, evil rulers should be German, really. So I'm fluent in German, so I rehearse my lines in German. I used to do this. When I made my speeches, I rehearsed those in German to get into the part.
In a way, I would like to ask, do you have a priest complex? You're such a convincing priest in this film. Wouldn't you like to have Don Murray as your priest? So compassionate. And then you play beautifully Dr. Norman Vincent Peale in One Man's Way. And you told me before that Don Murray's most successful film is not Bus Stop, or any of these that we've been talking about, but The Cross and the Switchblade, which he directed and wrote starring Pat Boone, which is a religious film, the way Hoodlum Priest is.
Yes.
You're drawn to these stories of
I'm drawn to
influence.
passionate people, and this is what they have in common. Like the priest, Father Clark, he's very passionate and committed to what he's doing, and Reverend Wilkerson, very passionate, the priest and minister. and across the switchblade. And same thing with Peel. He's very passionate about what he believes in. And that was the main thing. That's the main thing that attracts me to them. And also they were doing good things. They were people that were making important contributions to the world.
But you occasionally like to play bad guys.
Yeah, I enjoyed playing Brecht. That was fun playing Brecht. That was a gas. It was just, it was a fun picture for me. And then I did another one, Deadly Hero, where I played a rogue cop, and that was interesting.
A rogue cop.
Yeah.
And you told me your wife didn't recognize you in that part.
Yeah. Betty said that it was the only part I've ever played where she couldn't see me in it, any part of me in it at all, like I was another human being on the screen. And that was kind of interesting.
Other questions? Yes. Yes. Yes.
How did you find the story of the priest, the Hoodlum Priest? Was it a book?
I was on a publicity tour in St. Louis, and I was sitting down in the theater waiting for the picture to come on the screen, Shake Hands with the Devil, James Cagney, and this guy in a black suit, and I didn't see the tune on the collar, sat next to me, and he said, "Hey, kid, I ain't one of them square priests, you see?" And he started talking to me like this hoodlum right out of New Jersey. And I got fascinated. I said, "Well, Father," and then the picture started, and he kept on talking. I said, "Well, Father, I haven't seen this picture, but I'd like to hear your story. Would you come to my hotel?" So he came to the hotel the next day, and he told me the story of his life. We spent the whole day together, and I got fascinated. And he said he wanted to do a TV show so he could raise some money for this halfway house. And I said, "I think it's too good for just a TV show. I'd like to try to make a movie out of it." And that's when I went home and I wrote that 15 pages and gave it to Max Youngstein at United Artists, and he gave us the go-ahead.
One more question? Yes, yes, sir.
Doc, in one man's way, portraying Dr. Peel, did you consult with him and the others while the making of the film? And
Yeah, all the three of those religious characters were very much part of making the film. But yes, they were, yeah. And Norman Vincent Peale, his main input was from his book, and he didn't say very much. It's interesting. He's the most famous of the real life characters I've played, and I've played quite a few of them. And he's probably the most humble. Everything we did, he just thought was wonderful. Never criticized anything. He's an amazing man.
Okay, I think our time is up, but I want to say you've seen one great performance. Stay tuned for another great performance in a totally different range. So stay tuned for Bus Stop. Don Murray, thank you.
Thank you.